Nubook 1. From Then to Now. Part 7. The night time went fast, and I was tired from the long ride. They slept in the house, but I wanted to sleep outside in the darkness. Since I was here last, my dad's friends had built their houses also. There is so much open space around here, and so his friends built their homes a distance away. I figured that I would go visiting while I was here, and that I had plenty of time to do so. The countryside is very fertile, and there are trees everywhere. You could grow anything here. What the area was called didn't really matter. My parents never cared. They just lived. I found some soft ground to sleep on, and then I spread my blanket out. I lay there thinking of grandfather for the longest time, and how I wanted to see him, and so off I went as the body slept. I found myself flying in the other worlds, above some great land mass that was by the sea. Then I remembered that grandfather loved to always be near the great waters. Suddenly I spotted him sitting on a bluff overlooking the ocean. I flew down and landed right beside him. As I landed and went over to him, he said, "What took you so long?" I laughed as he said his funny line. "Grandfather, you left without saying goodbye," I said jokingly. "It was too much trouble. I wanted to get out of that earthly place and be by my real ocean," he said with a smile. "You do look happy, grandfather," I said. Then he remarked, "My name is White Warrior. You can call me that now. On Earth I was your grandfather, but here I am free, with all the real warriors. I am no longer a prisoner of the body, and all the details that it must have. It is good to see you, Goldie. I knew you would find me soon enough," he said as he smiled. "I had a feeling that you would be going on your journey to freedom, and I was hoping to catch up with you before you left," I said. "I'm so glad you did, Goldie. It looks as though the real guides waited for you to see me off, because here I go," he said, as he pointed out to sea. Then, from out over the ocean in the distant sky, there was a formation of light that caught my eye. I stood there and looked as the light became brighter and brighter. It was a beautiful vision that was unfolding right before us. I watched while it took its time to become what it would. The lights from the sky and the reflection on the water were so brilliant and stunning. I felt a real love for grandfather and what was about to take place for him. I knew this transition is very special because so many people leave the earth in misery or not knowing where to go, and some even stay lost between worlds and are thought of as ghosts. None of the tragedies of human errors exists with the real guides, as they take care of their own. There is such a vast difference as one becomes more aware with the proper education from all the misconceptions spread upon the earth. The whole of life is not about any sort of belief or faith, as it is already real and wonderful. A child cannot understand what their parents are trying to teach them, and so it is while one is trapped in the human consciousness, they will never see or perceive reality, because it takes a huge course to complete oneself for this real journey. "It is my birthday, Goldie. The real guides are preparing a big party for me," he said as he began to laugh. "Really, grandfather," I said, How old are you?" "Ha ha ha, silly boy! Every day is my birthday, and besides, I am White Warrior now, not your relative any more," he said as he laughed. I laughed with him, as we both watched the marvellous event of brilliance unfold as the sky seemed to open up. It was a gradual unveiling of luminous light that spread harmoniously outward as though it was reaching out to touch us. Then there began to appear numerous beings of light that were emerging from out of the centre of the light that hung over the ocean above the horizon. They floated toward us as we watched. I looked at grandfather as he was staring right at them. Then suddenly I knew what was taking place. They were coming for him. As they approached, he stood up and held his arms wide open. Then I saw his real being leave the body he was in and gently go with them, while the body fell to the ground and completely disappeared. He glided out a ways toward the real guides, and then looked back at me, and gave me a wave with his hand, as I could sense his gesture of love. I could see that he was totally happy and beaming from his being. It was an amazing sight to behold as he stood there as a radiant being of light. I saw Rebazar with him and all the other guides. The light from the unseen worlds filled the entire sky. There must have been thousands of great beings all lined up as grandfather went with them into the real universes of the Great Eagle. Standing there, I was experiencing the wonderful sincerity that life truly is. Then all of them went gently back into the light, and they were soon gone. The light returned to itself until there was just the sun hanging in the sky. I realised that he had waited for me, so that I could say goodbye. Even though I didn't, it didn't matter. I had the knowingness of what was taking place. My grandfather is a wonderful being that has the real connection that very few know about. I knew that I would see him again, and that he had to go to the higher levels to establish himself. Then he could return to where I was at if he chose to. It was not my time yet to learn about the real beyond, the secret realities that exist far past even our inner experiences. I knew that some day I would know, when I was able to travel the way of the Great Eagle and his guides. I felt a great privilege within myself as I stood and considered what had just taken place. This was the first time I had seen this event, and I knew what it meant. I soon returned to my body as the light of dawn began to enter where I was at on earth. I laid still for a while and listened to the morning birds as they made their usual singing routines. After a while they calmed down, and then there was a real silence, which was the best part. Then I heard the cat walk up. He just sat there and looked at me while I was resting. He always has the right expression on him. "I'm going to find a nice place to sleep," he said as he walked off. The silence was soon broken by my parents as they came out from their house and greeted me. "Hey, sleepy boy, come and help me get some wood for the fire, and here is some fish for our cat," she said, laughing. I immediately got up and went with her to gather the small pieces of wood that were scattered everywhere. It was a real joy to be home again, and to see the changes that had taken place. When we got back to the house and we were sitting around the table, I wanted to tell them what had taken place during the night. As I was sitting there and Mum was preparing some fruit for us, she asked, "Were you at the special happening during the night?" At first I didn't know what she meant, because she took me by surprise with what she asked. Then I realised she was talking about what took place with grandfather. Yes, I said. He told me his real name, but I will always think of him as my grandfather. She sat down and handed me some fruit, and said, "You are a very special being, Goldie. The world will not know that, but there will be those that will. All of us here are special, because the great eagle has granted us the awareness to see beyond the layers of darkness into the real light, and given you and me and your father the real voice of itself to live by. There are a lot of smart people in the world who think they know what they know, and then there are the very few who have the real connection to the great reality. You will tell others through your writings, and they will have the opportunity to explore for themselves. Mankind is coming into an age where his awareness of things will bring him what he wants in the material sense, but the real heart of him will still be searching for the true source of all. What we experience from the real side is because we are open to it. Most people will turn away, but you will be here to teach them. It takes someone like you with courage to do this. My mother is so wise and wonderful. I always felt humbled by my parents. They were always so mindful of everything they do in life, no matter how small the task. They took great care in doing it. Then I explained my experience with my grandfather. What I saw was the great light from beyond, and the brilliant guides coming from the unknown. Then grandfather went with them, like a great soaring bird, I said. Both of them smiled as they ate their fruit and laughed. What is so funny? I asked. We were standing right behind you at the place you were at, but you were so involved in what was taking place that you didn't even notice us. Even the cat was there, said my dad. I thought how wonderful they were also there, even though I did not know. I just looked at them and smiled. My relationship with my parents wasn't always verbal, but a notion of knowingness that seemed to prevail through all that we did together. I want to start writing my new book today, but I don't have any materials, I said to them. My mother got up and went to a cabinet she had. She pulled out some paper and a marker of some kind to write with, and brought them back to the table. This is what you used when you were young, and you liked to draw things, she said. There should be enough paper here to get you started, until someone goes to town. She handed me about 50 sheets that were rather large. I had to write with a feather, pen and ink. This is how it was then. You saved all of this for me, didn't you? I said. Something did tell me that it would be needed for a very special occasion, and this is the time and place for it to be created. Most of the world will not believe you, but that doesn't really matter. You will do it for all those that it does matter, and they will be ever so grateful, and so will all of life, she said, as I stood up and gave her a big hug. Thank you, Mother, I love you, I said, as I hugged her again. I decided to call my new book The Golden Warrior. It seemed to be right at the time. I also decided to start with how my parents met and when I was born into this life. I would sit with my mother and she would tell me how I came into this world. After my dad found my mother at the wagon train, she said that she fell in love with him right away. Her desire was always to have a child like me. She told me that bringing me up was the greatest joy of her life. I was raised like a real Indian in a teepee. Of course, the first few years I stayed close to my mother, but as I grew older, I went on little hunts with my father. He taught me about the natural things that are all around us, and also those things that are happening within ourselves. We would hunt for animals that we caught with the bow and arrow. We only took what we needed from the wilderness, because there were many other things to eat besides animals. It became fun to hunt, but I didn't like hurting the animals, so I let him do it. He also taught me how to fish in the streams like the bears do. I liked watching the fish go by and then trying to catch them. It was a real fun time for me at that early age. Grandfather would also come with us when he visited, but he would mainly just watch, because it was hard for him to get around. Sometimes we would spend the night in the forest, among the lovely, lonely wilderness. We were always all alone, and sometimes an animal or bird would come by and talk with us. The trees had their own language too, but they mainly kept to themselves. I learned they liked the peacefulness of just being. I liked the silence of the great outdoors and being with the real part of life that knows itself. Every night before I went to sleep, Dad would tell me to pay attention to my real experiences from the real side that I was having, because the real guides were always trying to teach me something new. I was at a young age when I met Rebazar on the invisible side. My father said that Rebazar is a great teacher, and that he had known him all his life from when he was a young boy. It was his father that knew him also, and that was my grandfather. There were other wonderful guides who would appear to us at times, but for the most part it was Rebazar. One of my first encounters with him was at the real ocean. I was about 3 or 4 at the time. I found myself at the water's edge, standing in the bright inner sunshine, and wondering where I was at. Then Rebazar came up from the shoreline along the beach and introduced himself. He then pointed out to the great ocean and said, "This is the sea of life. It is made up of the drops of life that you and I are. All life is light, and you and I are the same light, as all are. It is your time to wake up to this true reality now. You and I are the same bright star that has come from the true source, and has taken the journey to find ourselves. I have found myself, and now it is your turn to find yourself, and then make a place for yourself in the real universes." At the time and age I was at, I just stood there and listened, not knowing what to think. I liked looking out over the beautiful blue water, and watching the reflection of the sun's light dance upon it like sparkling jewels. It is similar, but different from the ocean. My parents took me to when we met Paul and Mary. I can still see all the events I went through with Rebazar, as I always carry them with me. Then Rebazar said, "Life is light, and all things that have come to be are from the real light. You and I are the real light life is. Within us is the answer to all that is. As time and events progresses on the earth, the idea of men will be to continually confine the free reality that is to a controlled documentation of authoritative obedience. The created documentation can be a reference point, but not the real answer. You now know that the real experience is within you, and that you are the answer and the true light for you. The way to what is real is through you. Letting go of the external hold and becoming part of the true reality is the only answer. There is only one true reality, and it created everything according to itself." This was a basic idea of what Rebazar first told me as an introduction to the real awareness of myself. Even though I was very young, it seems to be easy for me to remember so many of my meetings with him. His wisdom and training were very basic, and are not based upon any rules or regulations, or any kind of distortions, but directly with the real source itself, the sound and light. I have learned from my parents that the real guides are in direct contact with the ultimate source, and do not lend themselves to the gods that man has invented. Rebazar explained to me that the true reality, the great eagle, as he would sometimes call it, was not a person or a personality from out of past events and stories that have been handed down through history, but an actual isness that always is and will always be, and that it only continuously demonstrates real love and true freedom for all. That it cannot be found in the past or in the future, but always in the here and now, and only within ourselves. As we learn to open ourselves up to what it is, then we start our real journey, past the limited lives we have spent on the Earth and other planets and systems. The true reality is a real freeness, unlike anything institutionalized by humans. Rebazar Tars gave me the secrets of the real connection to the true light and voice of the great eagle, the reality of the unknown. It is very simple, but it is only for those who would risk all, and only they would find the real source. He explained that I did not have to give up living my earthly life, but to just give up those things within myself that had no real purpose or value, that it is the expanding of my awareness to what is real. It has taken me a long time to digest the things he has taught me. The more I have realized, the less I seem to know. "Less is more," he would say, "and the personal gathering of more is less. To realize the true reality, you must allow yourself to react to less, so that you can experience being more and more aware." He always directed me into the area of just being, and that everything took place in this moment now. He called it being isness. As I became older and more capable, we would take little journeys. I think I was about 12 when he brought me my flying horse. "Do you like him?" he said, with his great mannerism. I was so overjoyed that I could hardly speak. "He's wonderful, and he has wings. And you are giving him to me?" I said, almost crying. "He's all yours. What will you call him?" he asked. I thought for a moment, and then decided on Flying Spirit. "Can I ride him now?" I asked, hoping that it would be so. "Let's go," said Rebazar Tars, as he leapt from the ground into the air. I jumped on Flying Spirit, and then took off into the sky, where Rebazar Tars was waiting. "Let us fly on the wind and be free," he said, as he motioned for me to follow him. We took off, far above the land masses that were below. I could see scattered islands everywhere, as they were spread out like giant shells on a beach. The sky was filled with white, puffy clouds that were spaced apart and just right for flying over. It was a real thrill to experience the flight of myself on the wind and so free. Since then, I have had many trips into the unseen worlds with my flying horse. Rebazar has taught me that there is so much more to life than just the flying adventures. His main purpose is to teach all those who are willing the real secrets of true being and how life really is. He said that I should take time out to enjoy all the wonders of life and all it contains, and have a real purpose, something that keeps me going into the invisible reality where all things are realized and there is no end to the possibilities. He constantly pointed out that I was one of the fortunate ones, in that I was not brought up according to any doctrine that was to be found on the earth. that I learned what I knew from the real source, my openness to real experience. As we were flying, he began to explain. Beyond your experiences lies the endless and unseen vistas to the great reality that all souls are seeking, but they first must become new, so as to take on the real journey. Most of the people of Earth have become convinced by solicitors, peddling their written doctrines, and then they manipulate people to profess themselves into a belief of something. Earth's history has shown that most people cling to an idea that has been presented to them, which they allow themselves to be convinced by that has no real value, even though there are huge numbers of followers involved in the idea. Every person has the right to decide whatever they will, but you are among the very few who has not been exposed to the ideas that are of the limited nature and the invented gods of man. There are two basic fields of positioning action, and within these there are many more, but for now we will say there are two. First, there are the lower regions of natural limitations and creativity that profess to be the ultimate, until you are able to experience the true expansion of your real awareness beyond them. These first few levels are positioned in the mind and its various parts. Within these areas reside the decided space gods that man has created and made his official authority. These governors have built and rule the lower, beautiful heavens that can be enjoyed by all and are mainly for the benefit of learning. Eventually, each soul learns to realize and discover the true unseen worlds that the mind cannot perceive, and is introduced into a new position. Within the mind and emotional areas, the real you enjoys the things that it is able to create and survive with, while still having their bodies as vehicles on certain levels. The mind, and all that it entails, is the first awakening of the real awareness to what is possible. But the real you soon learns that the mind has its limitations, and discovers that the creative side of life is only temporary in the lower realms. This is why the heavens of man can only exist for so long, because they are from the creative nature of the true reality, and are not the real universes of sound and light. Until the real awareness of the individual is willing to let go of the control and manipulation of creativity for the sole purpose of keeping itself unaware, then it will not experience the true reality and all the benefits which are possible. The second position is that of being isness. This true reality lies beyond what the mind can even consider to exist. This wondrous reality is indifferent to all the ruling systems of the earth, and all of the mental and emotional realms, because there will always be those that want to maintain a control over others. This is where the real guidance to what is real becomes necessary, because the mind is limited to its area of experience only. This true reality, which is real, has always been here and now. It always has and will continue to do so, because it is an isness. There are so many teachings that look to an authority god, not realizing that it is the creative space gods that they are agreeing to, and not the true reality. There are so many gods within the mind realms and all that it decides, but there is only one true reality, and it is pure. The idea that all life is one is true, but the realization of what is real is separate what the mind can conceive. This is the position of the ultimate is, where the mind isn't. This is the isness that I am always referring to. It is in everything, yet unseen in the true sense by most. You have the heart of a child and the life for adventure. You are not interested in being stationary, like most of the earth people. The average person is more interested in their facts and figures and their possessions than they are of the true nature of what is real. The ideas that most people have of life amount to very little compared to the allness. It is important to take care of those things that involve your life on all levels, but to live your whole life just to support your physical body only is to plan for more limited embodiments into the future. This is where you have separated yourself from the mass, thinking of a limited embodiment to a real lifestyle. You are being prepared for something that will take place in the future, something that very few will ever know or even comprehend. It will take a lot of your strength, and that is why you are having the life you do right now. You need the freedom to explore, because the future will be a different set of situations to deal with. You will have the real guidance that very few will have, because you are willing to have it. It is the unseen training that almost no one would even consider, and you will only discover it within yourself. There are an endless number of real universal guides that the majority of Earth people know nothing about. Human history has documented certain individuals that have come to the Earth to bring their message. They were the students of life. Very few of them were the real guides, because the message they bring is too extreme for the people. The masses must have something that has been softened, or they will rebel, because of the comfort zone they have been brought up with. They have been taught to fear what their authorities have designated, instead of exploring and discovering real truth. But what usually happens, because the message is diluted, is that it is misunderstood, and then distorted by those that would misuse their positions. This is where the real experiences from the real side take over from the outer written words and provide the evidence to those who are the young at heart. The outer information is the start, but without the real guidance and unseen training, the outer language has no real value, except to comfort a person's mind and emotions into staying unaware for eons. There is no real experience in the mind, only in the real you. The creative realms are for the purpose of exposing an avenue to start with for the real you, to get through the process of elimination, to first discover what is not real, and then to eventually come into contact with the real guides, who are with the all-is, and then be shown what is real. There is always the appearance of a life in the creative realms, but it will only last so long. You have been here thousands of lifetimes to get to the position of where your awareness is now. Life itself is in no hurry for the real you to accomplish its destiny with itself. The real body of man, his very beingness, is not seen with the physical eyes. Once you have realized your true self, the lesser parts of you will make sense accordingly. Your training will be non-stop, and the knowledge and wisdom that you will achieve will be beyond the senses of your mind. Your part will be the hardest. Even your friends will wonder about you. When a person like you takes up the task of revealing the true reality to themselves, the unseen doors are opened, and the flood of light and sound comes through that produces the realizations from the ultimate true reality. This constant experience with the sound-light reality leads one to a contradiction with the mental established orders of authoritative mind controllers. They cannot and will not understand your new positioned view, because they are stuck with their routines of regulated and documented conformity. So, their first inclination is to resist, because they do not want to give up their position or control, as they have been taught to fear their gods. If they leave their formulated idealistic authority, they have been taught that fear is greater than real freedom. If they were to truly explore what you will be presenting, they would discover that it would benefit them and many others. In the creative world, there is always room for expansion. An idea that has been realised can be expanded upon, so that there are not as many limitations attached to it. It all depends upon those who handle the ideas and what they are willing to allow. Again, those systems that have been established on the earth have proven to themselves that their way works for them, and so they are usually not interested in seeing past what they have created. As they continue to only agree with their creations, they establish an involvement that disallows them to understand the real source of their creativeness. Creativity is a must within the mind worlds, and should be seen for what it is, a temporary situation that allows the individual to compare the unseen reality with what is only temporary. One cannot grasp the true reality all at once, but must gently be with it. Your experiences in the material levels provides for comparison to occur, so that you can recognise and then further realise what reality is. The average person would not understand this simple observation, because they are usually operating from their invented intellect, their literal senses, and not from their true being of all light. Very few will catch on to the fact of how the true reality is, and that is that it has no ending or beginning, that it is, and it is now, and it cannot be conceived through the senses of the mind and what is considered, but it is constantly experienced everywhere we are. It can only be seen and experienced by those who have the heart and will to see it. Each one of us must go through the educational process of what the mind and the levels it pertains to is, but then the opportunity comes to reach past the limited life into a new life of boundless expansion. The real guides provide this opportunity and attempt to make it available to all those who will listen. When the real presentation is brought to the outer life, the physical world, there is always great resistance from the distortedly educated because of what has been established here. People have been taught to fear, for the most part, what they do not understand. But they do not seem to fear their limited and hard life here, even when they do not know where they are going from here. The real gifts of life are always present, and within your grasp, so just be, said Rebazar as we continued to fly, and then I found myself back in my body.